Welcome back. Serotonin. This is the second chapter for this module. We'll go over how it's synthesized, released, and how it becomes inactive, what it has to do with our brain organization and its functions. Again, do not get tripped up by any of these. 5-HTP or 5-HT are conversions that end up in the synthesis of serotonin. 5-hydroxy, that means it has oxygen and hydrogen groups. Tryptophan, okay? Don't get tripped up by the words. This image helps you understand it. Basically, different parts of our bodies secrete this. There's the gut. I told you so. You didn't believe me. Dr. P is in the American Psychological Association, but also the American Medical Association, American Gastroenterological Association, which I know, so hot. But there's a reason. It turned out I was right the whole time. So there's a reason I'm teaching you these things. Your gut is really, really important. Even though it's called a neurotransmitter or a brain transmitter, it's actually your gut that makes more serotonin. So as we talked about, our diet actually can affect our serotonin levels. And serotonin is not only our happy sensation and emotion, it also contributes to our social initiation. So how many of you said hello to somebody first today? How many of you opened a door or passed something to somebody or made eye contact first? Well, those are all things that are done by your left frontal orbital cortex, the last thing in your brain to grow, if you remember from 2 lectures or a lecture ago. Yeah. And at any rate, this is your social initiation part of your brain. That means you're alive and kicking. Your development neuroanatomically is awesome. It's one of the last things to grow. It's actually very hard for many people to do. Autistic spectrum disorder, or many people just aren't into people. Even extroverted personality disorder people don't like people, generally speaking. This has actually been tested in social psych research. They use them for information and so on, but they don't necessarily like people. So at any rate, all of these need serotonin. We will talk about antidepressants and serotonin in a second. The reason that we need to watch our serotonin is because depression is one of the most common psychological disorders to humanity. They say about 1 in 5 or even 3 in 10 people, 30% of USA adults will have psychological disorders at some point in their lives directly themselves. If we count all the people who are near us that have them, that's another issue. Oh, MDMA. Someone is doing a debate topic on this. I would pay much attention. Methyl N-dioxymethamphetamine. What is it? Recreational drug, also known as MDMA. Some people think that it's a feel-good drug. Some people think it's dangerous as a neurotoxin. Some people think it can be used as medication to help alleviate depression. Yes, depression. And people titrate and say in narrative reports that they use smaller dosages to make themselves that way. At any rate, we are also calling them as a street name Ecstasy. And it is sometimes used in things like raver parties and so on. So in low doses, it is also being used for post-traumatic stress disorder, which is an anxiety disorder. So anxiety and depression have a lot in common. They are both worry-oriented and involve your mood. So 5-HT, here we see again, we have blockage in these by the serotonin reuptake inhibitors such as Prozac. which is a very common antidepressant drug. Its brand name is Prozac, but its actual name is fluoxetine, medically, chemically. So cocaine and MDMA block these reuptakes, basically, at the synaptic cleft. Unfortunately, it also affects your dopamine, so that's how we end up with more damage and side effects. These are some of the behavioral and psychophysiological symptoms: bladder function, obesity, hyperactivity. If you take out the SERT in mice, including depression and sleep issues, related issues. Our hippocampus helps us remember. The hippo remembers long-term memories. So, related to serotonin, we have fibers, even from the outer bark of our brain, cerebral cortex, relating with the hippocampus, basically. So serotonin is very important. A lot of what we remember is related to mood. So you might remember the one question you got wrong on a test and forget the 9 you got right, because we emotionally remember things because of things like this. We'll have a whole chapter on GABA, so don't worry about it right now. And don't memorize all these channel details because it's way beyond an undergraduate class. But some people report that some effects of some drugs that affect our 5-HT in certain ways can, through these specific agonists, create hallucinations. Sorry, I flipped through so many times. I was just showing you what I was talking about over and over again as I went through. We will talk about some of these drugs, Risperdal and so on, in the future, but one, know what is 5-HT. 2, know what it does with dopamine. 3, know what catecholamines and serotonin has to do with those, if it does, or which. And there's more information on MDMA for those of you presenting on it. And if you are presenting on other things, we will have a whole chapter on alcohol. We will, for some of you, I think there are 3 groups that could present on that debate topic, and so on. So marijuana will have a chapter, so don't stress right now, but do keep up with your issues. And if you're not concerned about the debate, sometimes we have the debate, sometimes we don't worry about it. So when they made antidepressants like serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and they kept people's serotonin a little bit higher at baseline, meaning normally, they were concerned that people were committing suicide or killing other people through Zoloft, another type of anxiolytic antidepressant, because they were no longer still, they were active. And so they were afraid it was making people aggressive, but nothing has ever been substantiated in courts nor non-forensic clinical neutral studies. We do need to watch dosages. Usually when you start with any of these antidepressants, they give you a very small dose and they titrate slowly up and up and up and up until they get the right amount for you. They rarely to never stop cold turkey. They will slowly take you off of it and decrease your dosage a little bit by a little bit, like 3/4, a half, a quarter of your dose, that type of thing. 5-HT is also related to pain, but there are many, many kinds of pain. So they say social pain has the same parts of pain in your brain as physical pain. So physical pain is if somebody punches and slaps you. Social pain is if somebody calls you names, verbally abuses you, socially ostracizes you. All of these things are in the same pain brain regions. They just take very similar routes. Learning and memory is affected by serotonin. People who are depressed, it's like having a cloud over your head. Charles Schulz, who made Peanuts cartoon, he was in a concentration camp similar to Auschwitz. He was Jewish, so he had a character that had raining on him constantly or a cloud above him or something. But anyway, it's like that cognitively because your serotonin is not quite right. So your hippocampus and your frontal cortex and your prefrontal cortex are not processing very well. And so you end up with slowed down attention and memory, basically impaired. So antidepressants definitely help cognitive functioning. And the reason we recommend them is called psychopharmacotherapy. We don't just say pharmacist versus brain surgery versus therapy. We say all of them and whatever mix you need to be at your best individual self tailored. No two people are the same. And in this way, if you need to start pharmacological intervention with medications first, this will get you to a certain level baseline where you can pay attention and remember what the therapist gave you for homework and the guidelines and instructions they gave you better. So if you're chronically depressed and has very, very low level mood, it's again difficult to pay attention and remember anything. So to get to therapeutic functionality level, you need to take the medication first. It's not one or the other. Does that make sense?